holding this event. What we need right now is we need more senators like Konni Burton. We need more representatives like my wife. I'm proud to keep my representative. And the reason I say that is because we need strong-willed legislators that aren't going to bend to the political establishment. The people that you see on this stage embody that promise that they will not bend to the political establishment, that we will not have our campaigns run by the political establishment, and that when we get to Austin, we will not be dictated to on how we will vote on bills. So I wanted to... it's an honor for me to be up here with Dr. Mays, because to me, the fact that we are here says something, and it should say something to each and every one of you. And I've probably only got 2 minutes left, but my name is C.J. Grisham. I am a recently retired Army First Sergeant. Probably many of you know who I am if you're local. I've been in the paper a couple of times. But what I really am is I'm a principled, long-standing, liberty-minded conservative. I believe strongly in that document that I took an oath to support and defend over 20 years ago. And that is to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. I took that oath. It's a lifelong oath. It will never go away from me. But now I want to take another oath to support and defend the Constitution of the state of Texas. And I want to make sure that we create a state that, in enforcing our Constitution, force the federal government to abide by their Constitution. When we talk about backbone, we had some great legislation that would have made Texas strong that died because of what I call squishy Republicans. We've had too many of those squishy Republicans in Austin. And quite frankly, this legislative session, I was frustrated and I was angry. And I said, I can either keep complaining about it, I can keep going out there and being a troublemaker on the outside, or I can be a troublemaker on the inside. And so this wasn't something that I ever aspired to. I'm doing this because I believe in liberty. I believe in our constitutional principles. I believe in the founding principles, not only of this state, when we left the Mexican government, but as a country, the liberty that we have here in Texas. We should be the strongest and the freest of all the 50 states. This is the home of Gonzales, the home of the Alamo. This should be the state that leads the country in telling the federal government, no. Your unconstitutional mandates stop at our border. That's where it stops. And as your senator, that's something that I am going to fight very strong to ensure, is that Texas is not dictated to by Washington, D.C., and I'm going to need your help for that, and I thank you for having me today.
I'm honored to be here with C.J., a true patriot and a true conservative. He is a conservative. And I'm Brent Mays. I'm a Christian, a retired physician, and former small business owner living in Texas, in Fredericksburg, with my wife, Fran. All my life, I've had a disdain for politicians. And now I am one. What changed? My attitude changed. All along, I've known that this fallen world is headed south, that things are going to get worse before they get better, before the Lord returns. I've chosen to sit it out in the small town, old-fashioned tranquility of Fredericksburg, where the darker side is mostly hidden. Just leave me alone. Let me live my Christian life, with my Christian wife, in my Christian house, and my Christian church, and fellowship with my Christian friends. I can't do it any longer. I can't stand idly by and watch the enemies of God and freedom destroy everything that has made this nation a state great. It started out slowly, but over the past 10 years, our descent into godlessness and tyranny has proceeded with jaw-dropping speed. The time is coming when we won't be allowed to live peacefully in our own homes. We'll be forced to choose between good and evil. You're against same-sex marriage, but want to stay quiet and be left alone? Not an option. Positively affirm it or suffer for it. You want to say it in your child's education? Not an option. Shut up and sit down. Government knows best. You want a choice in your medical care? Not an option. And so it goes. Bottom line, Texas is under attack, and it's time to stop complaining and start fighting to save it. Our northern border is under attack. We're under attack from our rulers in Congress, the presidency, and godless black-robed justices who tell us they are the definers of marriage, not God. We're under attack by the enemies of freedom who want to change us from a nation under God to one under the state. They want to control our schools, our government, our resources, and deny our freedom of religion. It's time to assert our states' rights. It's time to say no more. The federal government gets its constitutional powers from the states, not vice versa. No. No to same-sex marriage. No to the EPA regulating rainforests. No to those who kill the innocent in the womb. Our southern border is under attack. We're being invaded by illegal aliens, drug and sex traffickers, common criminals, and almost certainly by terrorists. Washington, including Republicans, wants open borders. We're on our own to fight this invasion. It's time to pass E-Verify in sanctuary cities, in-state tuition, and non-emergency social services for illegals. Senate District 24 is a district under attack by the urban cities that dominate the state. To Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, and Austin, we're the equivalent of flyover country. They want our water, our taxes, and our resources. They make laws and regulations that benefit them but hurt us. They pass down unfunded mandates and senseless regulations.
Thank you, Mr.
We
Mays.
must resist their overreaching. What?
That was 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Why?
I gave you some extra time too.
I follow rules.
I don't want to be mean, but I also don't want to be too unfair between you two, so.
Well, and the others have to have their comment.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay, let's see, I'm going back and forth here. I think I'm gonna start out with, Mr. Mays, could you tell us, what do you think is the single biggest issue facing Texas today?
The single biggest issue facing Texas today is border security.
And these are 3 minutes, so you'll get 3 minutes on this. Would you like to expand on that? What would you like to see Texas do in terms of?
Yes, as I said, the federal government's not going to do anything for border security. They want open border security. So we need to do, we must do what we can do. And we can in sanctuary cities. We don't need the feds to do that. We can implement E-Verify, public and private. We don't need the feds to do that. We can stop in-state tuition for illegal aliens. We can stop non-essential social services for illegal aliens. All those things we can do, and we must.
Thank you. Mr. Grisham?
Absolutely border security. For the last 15 years, I've worked in counterterrorism in the United States Army and with a focus on counterterrorism. And I've seen firsthand what's come across that border. I've seen it from its roots, where it starts in Central and South America. I've seen it from its roots in the Middle East. If you don't think that the enemy knows where our weak spots are, then you're misleading yourselves. Because if we know that we have a border problem, I guarantee you the enemy knows we have a border problem. And it's something that the federal government wants to tell you that we can't fix. That we're not allowed to because it's a federal issue. And quite frankly, this is one of the things that I'm talking about when we talk about the federal government telling states what to do. We have the constitutional authority to protect our borders. It's written right into Article 1, Section 9 of our Constitution. We have that authority to do that. So what we do is a lot of the things that Mr. Mays already mentioned. We end sanctuary cities. We cease giving any state funds to any city that continues a policy of sanctuary. We end any type of public assistance that is given to somebody who is illegal, no driver's licenses, institute an E-Verify system, and basically make Texas so hostile and uncomfortable for illegal immigrants that they go somewhere else, and eventually the other states will follow suit.
Thank you. And Ryan Gallanton has joined us, and so we're just going to go ahead and let him join in right away on this question. If you would, what is your opinion on what is the biggest issue facing Texas today?
We have so many big issues facing the state. To me, one of the biggest ones is failure in leadership at both the state and federal level. Here are some comments about border security. The federal government has absolutely abdicated its responsibility to secure the border in Texas. And the state needs to step forward and take action on its own. At the state level, we've had failures too. We don't have E-Verify. We should. Water is a huge issue that's going to continue to face the state. We don't have an adequate plan to deal with the water situation. And I do want to apologize to all of you for being late tonight. I had a flight that was delayed, and I told my 6-year-old son that he could come with me and I would pick him up. So I had to choose between getting here on time or getting him. And I'm never going to be a full-time politician. My family's always going to come first, but I have so much.
Okay, and again, these, the answers, you get 3 minutes on these, the time, and again, our timekeeper, Mr. Downton, in case you didn't know, is right here, so he'll give you kind of a 1 minute and a 30-second warning, yeah. Okay, I'm going to start with Mr. Grisham. Please recommend a program, commission, or agency you might be willing to cut or eliminate. And if you can't, please explain why.
You know, I've been looking into this a lot, and there really are a lot, and the problem is they've got their tentacles all over the state. But one of the very first ones that I've noticed that really needs to go away is the Lower Colorado River Authority, or regional, I'm sorry, the LCRA. That would probably be the first thing that I would abolish and try to bring local control back to our water supply. We also have, and maybe I'm just not a smart enough guy, but we have a Department of Banking and a Department of Credit Unions. Why do we need two? I think we can combine them. I don't even know why we need them to begin with. I'm trying to find their purpose, to be honest with you. And so those, just right off the bat, those are some of the ones that I would do. I think I would also like to get rid of printing any materials, any publicly funded signs, papers, anything in any language other than English.
Mr. Mays, same question.
Texas Film Commission.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Texas Film Commission. I get rid of that. I don't think we need to pay people to produce what I think of as pornography. They can do that for free. And also the commission, what's the name of the commission that sends money to get businesses to come to Texas? The Texas Enterprise Fund. Yeah, heck with that. The Texas model is fine to get business to Texas. We don't need to have the government picking winners and losers. The Texas Enterprise Fund.
Mr. Downton, same question.
Like CJ said, there are so many duplicative and unnecessary state agencies. One that jumped out to me when I was looking through them recently is the Office of Injured Employee Counsel. As if we don't have enough plaintiffs' lawyers in Texas willing to represent anyone who claims to have been injured, we don't need a whole state agency dedicated to doing that. There's also it's not aviary, some commission that regulates beekeepers. I don't know that we need to be regulating beekeepers in the state. If we do, I don't think we need a separate agency to do them. The government just needs to get out of the way. Texas is modeled on free enterprise. We need to get back to that focus.
Mr. Downton, go ahead and keep the microphone this time. This is just individual question for you. We're going to kind of sprinkle it throughout so that people don't get advantages over others. So please explain your opinion on zero-based budgeting and how that will impact your view of the state budgets you'll be asked to vote on if elected.
So zero-based budgeting, at least my understanding, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, is that every year, right now, each state agency does their budget by looking at what they spent the previous year, taking that as a given they were going to spend at least that much again, and how much do they want to add to what they were spending. The concept of zero-based budgeting is you start from zero. You look at your business, in this case your state agency, from the ground up, from scratch, every year, and you need to justify every aspect of your budget based on current operations, not what happened in the past. I think it is the way a business should be run, and it is the way the government should be run.
Thank you. Mr. Mays, mandates from Washington, D.C. have begun driving the state budget, mainly through Medicaid and other health care spending. What efforts will you support to bring about greater state and individual control in health care decision-making?
Well, I would continue not having a state fund for our Medicare, Obamacare option. We need to keep that. We've got Medicaid for kids through Obamacare, and we need to not add the adults for that. We need to resist, is another thing. Here, we have the state's rights, I believe, to not use Obamacare in Texas, to not obey Obamacare in Texas, to not follow Obamacare in Texas. And I think we should just reject Obamacare, period, in Texas.
All right, this is going to be again, all three of you are going to answer this question. Taxing entities in Texas spend, I'm going to go ahead and start, I'm going to give it back to Mr. Mays. Yes. Taxing entities in Texas spend millions of dollars on hired lobbyists, often working to oppose taxpayer-led efforts at reform and burden relief. Should state law directly prohibit all taxing entities from using tax dollars to hire lobbyists? If so, why?
Well, yeah, they should, because we're using our tax dollars to lobby against us. And if I understand correctly, that's what you've done.
It is something that is near and dear to my heart,
Yes,
yes.
and you've taken a lot of heat for it by refusing to entertain taxpayer lobbyists. So, yeah, I think that would be a good state law. And if I were elected senator, in that particular instance, I would follow your lead.
Thank you. And Mr. Downton? Go ahead.
It just seems like a matter of common sense. Elected officials are elected to listen to their constituents. Government agencies are hired to represent them. If a government agency or a school district needs to talk to their legislators, they can go talk to them. I see absolutely no reason why they need to pay somebody else to go do their job.
Thank you. Mr. Christian?
I don't think there's a formal pledge out there anywhere, but I have taken upon myself a personal pledge in making this very public. I will not allow a single government lobbying organization, a public sector lobbying organization, into my office. I don't need government coming to government to ask for more government. We need less government.
This is just an individual question to you, Mr. Christian. The Lieutenant Governor just last week placed tuition deregulation on his interim committee charges. What are your thoughts on tuition deregulation and how Texas can curb the inflating cost of tuition?
One of the problems we have with our education system right now is really what we saw full-fledged at the Democratic debates the other day is government trying to make everything free. And when you make everything free, and that adds more people into the pool and less resources, and so they have to charge more to keep the seats down. I support efforts that will create a more market-based system. Our universities should be competitive. They should be competitive not only in the talent pool that they have, but also in the pricing that they have. I know when my children were looking at schools, my daughter just finished her first year of college, price was one of those things that we looked at. And one of the reasons that colleges are so expensive right now, besides having to follow through with all of the state and federal mandates, is because of all the extra stuff that they have to pay for. For example, going to the legislator again and lobbying for more money. And so deregulation, I support deregulation, absolutely. I think that schools, if they are marketable, then they can thrive on their own. But obviously these are state schools, so we need to make them Texas-based, and there does need to be some oversight. But as far as what the Lieutenant Governor has done, from what I've read, and I have to admit I haven't looked into it deeply, but I support the idea.
Thank you. Go ahead and sit down to Mr. Downton. This will be a question for all three of you. Ending diversions was a great accomplishment the legislature made this past session. With the vote of SJR 5 quickly approaching in November, the topic of toll roads are on the forefront of discussion. What is your position on toll roads?
Sure. Can I touch briefly on education before I go
You've
back?
got 3 minutes.
I'll combine them in 3. Federal student loans are one of the worst things to happen in this country in the last 50 years. Under President Obama, we now have $1.3 trillion in federal student loan debt. That's what's driving higher tuition in this country. Parents and students think they get this free money, but then they find out when they graduate it's not free, it's unsustainable. It's going to be the next economic bubble to burst in the country. And I applaud the Lieutenant Governor for getting us back at looking at higher education funding. Toll roads, in my mind, roads should be free. At the same time, we don't have the money to pay for all the roads we need. We certainly should never toll any current free roads. If we're looking at new areas that we don't have adequate funding, I think we should look at all possibilities, including the possibility of tolls. I don't like them any more than you do, but I do think in our current transportation environment where there is not enough money for transportation, I certainly don't want to raise taxes. Tolls are the equivalent of an end user consumption tax. It is the fairest way to raise money. I think we should be phasing out property taxes and replacing it with higher sales tax, because it's the fairest way to do it. Tolls are that type of fair process, as much as we all hate them.
Mr. Mays, the same question.
I grew up in Fort Worth, and I think, I'm not positive, but I think the toll road between Fort Worth and Dallas was the first toll road in Texas. I didn't like it then, and I don't like toll roads now. I'm totally opposed to toll roads. There's a way that toll roads can work, but we don't use it. It's gotten so out of control that there's no hope for toll roads. What the toll roads are doing now is double taxation. They tax us to build the roads, they tax us to ride the roads. They take a road that's already free, they add a toll to it, they tax it. It's a method of changing our behavior. They want to tax it so high that we can't ride on the road. Then they build a road, and they borrow money to build the road, and then they build another road, and they take the money from the first road to pay the debt on the second road, and then they build a third road, and they take that debt, and so you get to where you can never pay off the debt, and all we're doing is increasing our state debt and making it difficult. And it's not just a problem for urban Texas. What it does is this double taxation, this high cost of toll roads, is causing us in the rural District 24 not to have the roads we need. There's no money left because they spent it on toll roads.
So I agree. I hate toll roads as well. But I will tell you, I love going on one hand down to San Antonio and bypassing Austin. Because I feel smarter having gone around Austin. But let me tell you though, that $50 bill that you get in the mail is incredible. Now, I understand a limited time toll road for something like 130, if you guys have ever been on 130. That's a very convenient road that needed to be built to keep as many people out of Austin as possible. And, but what I don't support is me having to pay the Italians or the French, whoever owns that road. That's where my money's going. I do not support that. I don't want to be paying the French money. Once that toll road is paid for, there needs to be legislation that a toll road can only collect tolls until the debt that it costs to build it is gone. Try going to Houston and go anywhere without getting on a toll road. I adamantly oppose that because you can't get anywhere. And there's no choice. If you have no choice to travel without going through a toll road, then that's an unlawful, unconstitutional toll road, in my opinion. Same up in the DFW area in some places. You accidentally get on a toll road, and next thing you know, you've got a bill. And we just got a bill, I think last year, that was 3 years old. We had no idea what it was because we'd never been up on that road. And then we realized it was an old car because it was a different license plate number. So that's my feeling on tolls. I think they are good if we're going to build an extra road, instead of raising taxes, use that consumption tax, because if people want to use that road to bypass a major artery or a major city, then it's a convenience. But once that road is paid off, that toll should go away.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we'll start with Mr. Mays. Universal pre-K was high on Governor Abbott's list of legislative goals. Where do you stand on this issue?
Same place I stand on in-state tuition for illegal aliens. I'm against it. Again, it's daycare. We don't need more daycare. It's worse than daycare. It'll end up being the beginning indoctrination of our children to change their attitudes. And I'm totally opposed to it. It was a mistake. I'm sorry he did it. What can I say?
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Christian. Go ahead.
You know, Abbott's got some great ideas, and he's got some boondoggles. And this idea of universal pre-K, I am adamantly 100% opposed to. I have 2 of my 3 kids are here. My third just went on a mission up to Canada. And my wife did a very good job in their early years raising them without having the government tell them what to think. And quite frankly, in those early years, I don't need my 4-year-olds being taught about sexual ed classes, because you know that's going to come up, about you know what? It worked for hundreds of years, our little 12-year system. Let's keep it that way. Let our kids be kids early on. Let them enjoy their lives. And you know what? If a mother or father wants to educate their 3 or 4-year-old child at a pre-K or a 5-year-old, then they can get together with other moms and dads and create a little co-op and a little neighborhood pre-K, and they can do it themselves. And then they're in control of what their kids are being taught.
I think our public education system is failing our children. I think we have some of the highest property taxes in the country, yet the money's not properly going to our schools. I don't want a bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. telling people here in Temple, Texas what you need to teach your kids. I don't think we should be following Common Core. We should be doing our own educational system. So I see no reason to add an additional year of schooling that's going to require additional property taxes to pay for. My son went to pre-K. I paid for that. That was my decision. If parents choose to send their children to pre-K, they should have that option and ability. But I don't think as a state we need to increase the number of years in our public education system.
Thank you. Go ahead and keep the microphone. Yeah, go ahead and keep the microphone, please. Mr. Downton, state and local governments in Texas participate in so-called economic development programs that dole out millions of taxpayer dollars to corporations. What are your opinions on the necessity of these programs to attract jobs and investment to Texas? And will you support the continuation of these programs if elected?
So it depends on the program. If a program is paying out taxpayer dollars to attract businesses here, I'm opposed to it. If a program is telling a private company, if you come in and create X number of jobs, and people are going to be spending that money in the region, we'll give you a temporary reduction in the taxes you pay, that I can see the benefit of, because those are tax dollars that today do not exist. If that company does not come here, they don't pay any taxes. So for us to say for a certain number of years, we're going to give you 25% off your taxes, provided you create however many hundred jobs you've promised, I'm okay with that, as long as there's enforcement. I think that's an area the state's failed, that we haven't gone back and audited and seen if these companies have actually provided the jobs and spent on infrastructure as they promised. I think all of the contracts we enter into to do any abatements like that should have a mechanism where the company is required to pay back every dollar that they got in abatements if they fail to live up to their promises.
Mr. Mays, the same question. You alluded to it earlier, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm against economic development programs. First of all, I don't think it's a core function of government. So, to me, that's enough. Second, the Texas model with low taxes, opportunity, and low regulation is working very well. Thank you. And as I said before, the same thing. I don't think government, and who loves it more than Obama, that government should be in the business of picking winners and losers in Texas. We've got a good state, we've got a good model. Let's continue to grow. We're the envy of the nation, the envy of the world. We don't need the economic development program.
Mr. Bishop?
I won't repeat a lot of that. I completely agree. If we're going to spend taxpayer money, locally we have a perfect example of how these programs fail the people and waste our money. We were supposed to be getting a Toyota plant here, and this city spent millions and millions of taxpayer dollars preparing for this Toyota plant to come to Temple, only after a few years for Toyota to say, we changed our mind. So devoting taxpayer money to invite a business in is not how you invite. If you have to do that, then there's already something wrong with the economic development of this state. So if you're a great city that's got a great tax plan, and a great state that's got a great tax plan, and a great economic, great business plan that's inviting, that has low taxes, that encourages them to come and create jobs, they're going to do that on their own. But I shouldn't have to pay to bring a Toyota factory or whatever it is when I drive a Dodge.
Mr. Mays.
You gotta love him.
Yeah. I don't know why that cracked me up. Okay, Mr. Mays, Texas has a rainy day fund set aside with several $1 billion. As a potential legislator, in what circumstance would you vote to use money from this fund?
Only in a rainy day. Dire emergency. Rainy day fund is not to be rated to solve short-term problems. I said that in a rainy day, and I really mean it, that only in a serious emergency should we raid the rainy day fund. It ends up, I believe, being another way to tax us, and so I would hold that only for dire emergencies.
Okay. Mr. Dalton?
As Brian said, the obvious answer is you only take money out of the rainy day fund when there's a true rainy day, which we don't have very many of in Texas, thankfully, because we have a great economic situation, setting aside the weather. I do think we should look at an appropriate, what's the limit for how much money you need to build up for a rainy day? And whenever we've determined that limit and we hit it, well, excess money should be going back to the taxpayers as a refund. The rainy day fund is not designed to exist until it reaches the total of all Texas domestic product. I think we should be looking at finding ways to give that money back to taxpayers. It's their money. If the state doesn't need it, give it back.
Mr. Bishop?
I should probably hold the mic, so I'm not saying, what those guys said. But, I like to look at, what we really need to do is kind of stop calling it a rainy day fund, because then that makes it too easy for government. Let's call it a disaster relief fund. Because that's the only time we should have to even tap into this fund. It should be for things like a Hurricane Katrina that might hit Texas. It should be for some severe drought in which we need to get some kind of water development going. That's what the money is for. And then once we reach that cap, there should be a pretty substantial cap. That way, when we do have an emergency, we're not relying on FEMA to come in here and do what Texans can do for themselves. And whatever goes above that cap, that money should definitely be returned to the taxpayers, not looked at as a way to spend more money, because right now, that's what our government is doing, is it's finding ways to take that money and justify it without just giving it back to us. And so, pretty simple.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Grisham, after the recent same-sex marriage ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court, there has been a national discussion on same-sex rights versus the rights of religious leaders and adherents. Where do you come down on this issue, and what is the role of the state in these matters?
The role of the state is to tell the Supreme Court, you made your decision, now you come to Texas and enforce it. Everybody has the exact same right to marry someone of the same sex or not as I do. I can't marry a man and I'm straight. So there's already marriage equality. What I really think we need to do is just get the government out of the business of marriage altogether. I shouldn't have to go to my local county and ask for permission to marry the most beautiful woman in the world. And that'll fix that. And then we keep it back in the churches. Let God back into what is a holy, sanctified practice of marriage. But, the people of Texas have spoken. We do not want gay marriage here. And if the people say that, where does the Supreme Court get off telling us how we are going to do this? And quite frankly, I think what the state needs to do is what that Kentucky clerk did and just say, no, we're not doing it. And, you know, what are they going to do? Bring the troops in here to force us to marry gay people? I doubt it, because I'm one of them and I won't do it.
Same question.
I agree with CJ. The Supreme Court ruling was an unconstitutional ruling. The Supreme Court gives opinions, they don't make law. We keep hearing it's settled law. It's not settled law. It's not a law. It's a ruling. And we have our state's rights. We have voted in Texas to make a constitutional amendment that marriage is between a man and a woman. We have the right to have that. There's this understanding or this rule of lesser magistrates. That's the idea. It's like Peter in prison, that you do not obey a superior authority in the government when it's against God's law. So it's not okay to reject the Supreme Court ruling. For Christians, it's demanded. It's our responsibility. And we don't need to call a special session to make something up. Governor Abbott needs to stand up and say no.
Roe versus Wade was a Supreme Court ruling. It was one of the worst rulings ever in the history of this country. And millions of people have continued to fight to change people's minds and beliefs and attitudes in the law. And that is the right and responsibility of every citizen. With respect to marriage, I don't think the state should be involved. I agree with CJ, marriage is a religious issue. It is between you and your spouse and God. And the state should be out of the marriage business.
Yeah, go ahead and keep it down there. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take questions that were brought to us from the audience. But first, I was remiss. I want to recognize State Rep Molly White. She's here tonight. Would you stand up? Thank you to my district director for reminding me about that. My apologies, Molly. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it very much. Okay, this will probably be far too easy for one particular candidate here, but I want to start with you, Mr. Downton. Will you support constitutional carry?
I really feel like CJ should get that.
Yeah, this was from the audience. This is from the audience.
I am a strong supporter of open carry. I am also a strong supporter of the need of our police to be able to protect us. If they see a person looking suspicious carrying a gun, I want them to be able to ask, do you have a license for that weapon? So to the extent constitutional carry is saying the police can't do that, then I'm not going to be able to support that. But the Second Amendment is a key right, and the Democrats at their debate suggesting that individuals don't have the right to carry firearms is ludicrous and has no place in Texas or the country.
I think if Susan King is elected, constitutional carry will pass in the next session. I don't think that's an issue. I think we're in pretty good shape with gun rights, and I think it's inevitable that constitutional carry is going to pass. And I fully support constitutional carry. I heard a conservative ask in a Shark Tank, said, what do you think about the Second Amendment? Should we have constitutional carry? And he said, you know, I don't have to have a permit to exercise my First Amendment rights. I don't think I need a permit to exercise my Second Amendment rights. And I thought about that, and I said, I want to use that line myself sometime. And then I thought more deeply, and I thought, friends, I truly believe we're going to have constitutional carry. It's not our Second Amendment rights that are under greatest threat. It's our religious freedom. They're coming for us, for our religious freedom. It's our First Amendment rights. We're not going to be able to get a license for our First Amendment rights, and we need to fight for those in the next session for sure.
Can you define constitutional? Yeah, obviously, I fought very hard for constitutional carry this session. And let me tell you something, that fight is why I'm sitting up here today. because we had supposedly the most conservative legislature in Texas history. Our state party platform lists constitutional carry as what we are fighting for. It's one of those things that we are supposed to pass. And I couldn't get a total, out of 181 legislators, I could not get more than 12 to sign on to a constitutional carry bill. Everyone fought me, not everyone, there are people in this room that did not. Almost every legislator fought me on that. What does constitutional carry mean? It means if you can legally own and carry a firearm, if you can legally purchase, if you can legally own and purchase a firearm, you should be able to legally carry that firearm without begging the government for permission, without paying a $250 tax, without going through a government-mandated training program, without shooting a piece of paper 5 feet in front of you, and typically your guy's going to come at you for. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. And I really would kind of like. I like down Ryan. We've talked a couple times, but I really kind of take exception. I don't think police need to be looking at gun owners as the enemy, and that's the problem we have in this state. And I know because I've been a victim of this. When the police force and the government looks at you as an armed citizen as the problem, and looks at you as a potential terrorist, every single one of you first, then we've also lost our Fifth Amendment. We've also lost due process. What I want police officers to do is respect the Constitution. And yes, if you are doing something that leads to reasonable suspicion or probable cause, by all means. But if I'm sitting down enjoying a hamburger and I've got my nice Kemper 45 on my side with pearl handles, leave me alone. And I don't think law enforcement, and this is another reason why I'm standing up here. There was an amendment to the open carry bill that would have expressly prohibited law enforcement from going up to someone lawfully carrying a firearm and demand to see their papers. their CHL. And that amendment, it passed in the House and it passed in the Senate. And thank you, Molly, and thank you, Connie, for supporting that. But there were 4 words different. One said in a person's possession, and the other said in the possession of a person. And our conservative legislature, this bastion of constitutional rights that we have in Austin, went to a conference committee because they could not agree that that means the exact same thing. And that amendment was thrown out, and now law enforcement across the state are telling their cops that if I'm walking down the street with my son, or I'm walking down the street by myself, enjoying a nice Schlotsky's hamburger, no, they didn't pay me to say that, I should not be approached. And I quite frankly take offense to anyone saying that the police have more rights than I do.
This is, I guess, a yes or no question. Mr. Grisham, have you ever donated campaign funds to a Democrat?
No. And I never will.
No.
No.
Okay, that was pretty easy. All right.
The people who aren't here would have different answers.
Just in case anyone pulls my finance report, I do want to say, in a nonpartisan mayoral election between 3 Democrats, I picked the one I thought was the most conservative. So if you count that, I did one time, but I've never donated to a Democrat running as a Democrat or anyone running against a Republican.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Let me go ahead. Let's see. Okay, where is it? Okay, Mr. Mays. Are you pro-life? And please define what pro-life means to you. Yeah, are you pro-life? And please define what pro-life means to you.
Yeah, I'm pro-life. Pro-life means that life is, there's sanctity of life from fertilization to natural death. Pro-life means to me that there are no exceptions for abortion. Pro-life means to me that there is no euthanasia, there's no slippery slope towards euthanasia. Pro-life means to me that there's no assisted suicide that's approved by the state. Pro-life to me is that God has said that human life has intrinsic value, and the value is based on God giving it to the person. It's not based on whether the person seems to have utility to someone or to the state. When we take away the sanctity of life, we are giving that power to the state. The state will decide eventually who has value and who doesn't. It's another matter of the state putting itself over God. And it will not happen. It can happen, but it won't work out well. Because God is sovereign. And you can tilt at God like the Supreme Court justices and changing the definition or pretending to change the definition of same-sex marriage. You can pretend, but it's pretense. It doesn't change anything. And the state cannot determine the value of a human. God is deciding.
I believe that life actually begins before conception. I believe that we are spirits that are whispered into our bodies at the point of conception by our Father in heaven. That those lives begin right there inside that woman's womb. And that they are holy from the time that they are created and breathed in to the time that they naturally die. And I was listening again to the Democratic debates the other night, and a thought occurred to me. Maybe if we mandated that if we're going to have abortions, that they be committed with firearms, they'd actually care. Because they care a lot about firearms taking people's lives, but they don't care about the lives of our unborn child. And I know that sounds crass, but that's literally what we're doing when we allow abortion. It might not be a firearm, but it doesn't matter if it's a needle, if it's a pill, if it's an incision. Whatever that is, life is precious. I have 3 beautiful children, and another one that I'm sure is up there somewhere. And I know for a fact that when my wife and I prayed about having children, that we knew that they were ready to come down. So if life exists, if we have souls, then life exists at the moment that life is created. And then that needs to be protected not only in the beginning, but in the end stages of life. I know Obama doesn't think that once you've lived 60, 70, or 80 years that your life is worth anything anymore. But I believe your life is worth something until God decides that it's time for you to come home.
Yes, I'm pro-life, and pro-life is the protection of life from conception until death. I was at the Texas Alliance for a Life dinner earlier this week and got to hear a woman speak, Abby Johnson, who used to be a director for Planned Parenthood. Apparently she was Planned Parenthood's National Employee of the Year. And then one day, a doctor called her into the abortion room to ask for her help to perform an ultrasound-guided abortion. And she had to watch a 13-week-old baby get sucked out and dismembered. And that day she walked out of Planned Parenthood and has been crusading against them ever since. It's not enough to defund Planned Parenthood. They need to be out of business.
How do you expect to implement your ability to identify illegal immigrants without Texas becoming a show-me-your-papers state? How will citizens' liberties be protected from law enforcement demanding identification?
I don't think we should be telling our police what laws to follow and what laws not to follow. That's what a sanctuary city is. It's a city or a police department telling police officers, you can't ask someone that they suspect is not here legally if they are. I think we should outlaw sanctuary cities. E-Verify to me is going to be the best way to identify illegal immigrants. If all businesses use E-Verify, then they won't be able to get jobs, and then they won't be here.
Same question.
I agree with Ryan. I don't look forward to police identifying illegal immigrants. We all have, most all of us, probably know illegal immigrants that we love and care for. The problem is we need to stop the magnets that are bringing them here. And one of those magnets, one big magnet, is jobs. And so we don't have to find them on the street if they don't have jobs. I believe they make fun of people that say they'll self-deport. I believe they will self-deport. And if they don't self-deport south, maybe they'll self-deport north. And at least that's better than staying in Texas. So I think that if we have E-Verify, that will solve the problem. I'm not for, looking and show me your papers, except when you apply for a job. Show me that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I don't want law enforcement going around asking people to show their papers by the color of their skin or the color of their eyes or the way they talk. What we need to do is we need to create policies in Texas, as I mentioned earlier, that make Texas completely hostile to illegal immigration. You need a license or some sort of identification to vote, to prove who you are. You need it to get a driver, or to drive a car, to buy a car, to rent a house, to set up an electricity, power grid, whatever. But if you cut off any access to state-funded materials, state-funded programs, state-funded agencies, they're going to go away by themselves. Then obviously, if a law enforcement finds an illegal immigrant through criminal activity, then at that point, that's where we run them through the courts the way we do anybody else. And if they're going to get released after, maybe their sentence is 2 months, well, instead of releasing them, we either send them to New York, or California, or back to wherever they came from.
You answered that, right? Okay. Mr. Mays, what is your stance on supporting Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution and supporting a state-held amending convention? Did I read that right? Yeah, I'm guessing it's a constitutional convention. So what is your position on that?
I'm firmly sitting on the fence. I have heard many good arguments about an Article 5 convention. I've heard many that passionately believe that it's the only hope for us. I've heard others that passionately believe that it could get out of control. I don't have a good answer for that now, and it's not that I haven't thought about it. But I believe possibly the argument that you have to have 38 states to agree, put some likelihood it won't get out of control, or that you require the delegates, you give them a limited authority when you send them to the Constitutional Convention will assure that it won't get out of control. But I don't think I have the answer for an Article 5 convention, and I know it's a very, very passionate topic. I was at a meeting that Molly White spoke at not too long ago, and before she even had a chance to make her remarks, some fellow in the back was so angry and upset that he said, if we don't have an Article 5 convention, if you don't support an Article 5 convention, I won't vote for you or anybody that doesn't support it. I don't think it's that simple. I think it's a difficult, thorny case, and we need to be careful.
I adamantly support a Article 5 Constitutional Convention. I have also researched this till I'm blue in the face. I believe that this, we cannot rely on the federal government to rein itself in. That is a fact. It cannot happen. People have asked me, why don't you run against John Carter? Because I don't want to go to D.C. The federal government is broken. It is absolutely broken. It is up to the states. Let me tell you about this is my philosophy of the hierarchy of authority in this country. It begins right where you're sitting right now. That is the ultimate authority. The second authority is your state and then your federal. The people created the states created the federal government. It is up to the states to put the federal government in check. This last election cycle, Republicans finally came into control of an overwhelming majority of state houses, of both chambers in the United States. So if we think that we're going to get a constitutional convention that abolishes the Second Amendment or abolishes this or abolishes that, first thing you have to remember is, even if they did abolish the Second Amendment, it didn't give us that right. We still have the right to keep and bear arms. It just tells the federal government to keep your hands off of it and gives them a warning. But we don't have to worry about that. I am confident that the people in the states, acting as states, can go and create a constitutional convention and come out with amendment processes that rein in our federal government, that require them to have a balanced budget, that require them to follow the Constitution, that return our senators back to us, and let the states actually have representation in the federal government. The 17th Amendment is probably the most bastardized constitutional amendment that we got. It destroyed our states' rights. So it is up to us to go back, create this Article 5 convention, get some meaningful amendments in there. And we've had these conventions in the past. And they've tried those kinds of things in the past. And quite frankly, I think the Bill of Rights, I'm confident, the Bill of Rights is secure. What's not secure is federal government authority and power.
I support a constitutional convention. I think the majority of the states in this country are clearly conservative. I don't think we need to worry about California or New York being able to overrun one of those conventions. The one place where I would disagree with CJ a little bit, as important as voters are, they are not the ultimate authority in this country. God is and will always be the ultimate authority. And I think we can count on him that if we get to a constitutional convention and people pray, that God will guide the people that are selected to go there. So I recognize the concerns that Brent brought up, but I really don't think we'll have a problem if we get there.
These really, I really like those questions. I'm moving to them. Again, these are all questions from the audience. The Lieutenant Governor recently released the interim charges for the Senate. In them, he calls for a study of school choice programs around the nation. Do you support school choice initiatives for the state?
Yes. There are so many problems with our public education system. I already talked earlier about the high taxes, failing schools, and then you top it all off with the lack of school choice. It needs to change. I recognize the problems with it. I don't want to pull all of our money out of our public schools. No one's saying that when they say they support school choice. It's just finding a way to let parents choose how to educate their children.
Mr. Mays?
When I first got into this, my first answer is yes, I support school choice. I think the money should follow the child. I still believe that. But it's not quite that simple. We need to let the money follow the child, but we also need to make sure that our public school kids are not in failing schools. And we need to make sure that magnet schools and charter schools aren't above the law. Part of the problem is that we have charter schools being run by Arabs. They're becoming growing places for Muslims to teach Sharia law and such, and there's no oversight because there's no local school board to have oversight for them. So it's not so simple. We can have the money follow the child, but by golly, we have to have some sort of oversight, or it's not going to work out well. And so I think that the money should follow the child, but we need oversight, and we need to protect our public schools. And the public schools get a bad beating, but the public schools are also very highly regulated. So we need to let the public schools also innovate. All of the failing schools in the state of Texas are outside of Senate District 24. So we need to work a combination, but I do believe that money should follow the child, but there has to be accountability so we don't get rogue schools.
I've been around so many homeschool children, and they're some of the most awesome kids. So the level of education is no different. I believe 100% in school choice. I have nieces and nephews that have been home taught their entire lives. They are very smart kids. In some ways, they're even more aware of what's going on around them than our public schools are. I was talking to one of my kids the other day, and they were talking about this Democratic debate that happened, and he was saying that, Dad, everyone's talking about all the free college in school. If my kid was hearing about that at my home school, he would be getting a proper education about what a free education really looks like. And so that scares me. Our public schools, not all of them are like this, but we should have a choice. If my kids, when I get a job, I'm not required to get a job based on where I live. Why should I be required to go to a school based on where I live? I should be allowed to pick if this school is failing its children, or it's teaching doctrine that I don't believe in, or that opposes my Christian beliefs, then I should be able to move them to this other school. And, there should also be some sort of parental involvement into the rating system of our schools so that they can warn other parents about what they're going into. When I was in Alabama, stationed up in Huntsville, I was I was so enraged at what our local school system there was doing to take parents out of education. They thought that that my child belonged to them for 8 hours of the day, and that I had no right to say anything about how they were taught, what they were taught, or when they were taught. So I believe in school choice. I think the money should follow the child. I think parents who sometimes wisely decide to home teach their kids should be allowed to be reimbursed for that, because they're not in the system.
Thank you. Okay. CJ, Mr. Christian. Red light cameras were discussed at length in the legislature this session. Cities such as Arlington and College Station have passed city ordinances banning these cameras. However, Killeen is a notable city doubling down on its use of red light cameras. Do you support or oppose the ban of red light cameras? Why or why not?
I adamantly oppose red light cameras, and here's a headline if there's media here. I've got a red light ticket in Killeen that I have refused to even acknowledge for 3 years. Read those tickets when you get them. That's not going to the state. Those aren't administered by the state. Those are administered by some private outside of here. And so, here's where I exercise a little bit of civil disobedience. If I get a red light ticket, it goes in the trash. Because there is no legal remedy. Read the bottom of the ticket. It says do not go to court, don't schedule a date. It literally is a contract between you and a private entity. Red light cameras are unconstitutional. I think they're immoral, and I frankly refuse to even care when I get one in the mail. So I would oppose it. I would submit, I would sponsor, I would co-author, I would do whatever it takes to ban red light cameras. But I do have one sitting from Killeen, so if you guys put it in the paper there, they might come look for me, but I think the statute of limitations is up.
Mr. Mays.
I'm totally opposed to red light cameras. I hate them. It's just to make the red light camera makers and owners a lot of money. That's basically what it does, number one. And number two, it makes the city a lot of money. And studies have shown it doesn't help. I don't know why, Killeen doesn't rise up on their own. We have voters in Killeen too. So I would say Killeen folks need to go to their own people and get rid of those red light cameras. But I totally oppose red light cameras.
Yeah.
It's an interesting day for this to come up because I got a letter in the mail today from Italy, where I was 2 years ago. And Italy apparently somehow is giving me a speeding ticket from 2 years ago when I was never stopped by any officer. I don't know when, where, or anything else about it. To me, that's the same as red light cameras. They shouldn't exist. I think we should ban them at the state level.
Okay, now this is from the audience, and I'm taking me out of this because I'm taking me out of this. Who are some legislators you would seek for guidance or a mentorship if you are elected? And I'm taking me out of this.
I'll tell you one legislator I like a lot, Brian Hughes. He's running for Senate right now too. I think he's done a great job in the House. He's a very principled Christian conservative. Someone I admire. I've had a chance to work with him a little bit, and he's someone I would definitely be interested in continuing to talk to if he gets there. Now, he's got a great opponent that I like a lot and respect too in David Simpson, so please don't take this as me endorsing Brian, because David's great too, but I really enjoy Brian's approach to legislation.
Mr. Mays.
I may be running for the wrong office, but I'd say Stickland.
His head just got bigger.
I've told people before, and I really mean it, that I couldn't run for the office if I had to run for the House. My head would explode. The abuse that Molly has put up with and others of her conservative caliber is obscene. So I would talk to Stickland and see how in the world have you stood it. Aside from him, Bob Hall, Konni Burton, they've been mistreated. They've stood up. I would talk to them, and then probably Brian Birdwell. You know, I would look to Brian.
Mr. Christian?
I'll tell you who I have talked to because I'm not a politician, so I didn't even know how to file my paperwork. But obviously, at the risk of sounding like I'm sucking up, the two representatives that are here, Senator Burton and Molly White, have actually reached out to both. And also Bob Hall. And I'll tell you what, Bob Hall, look into his campaign. That is a true grassroots conservative who went up against the establishment and kicked their tail, paying just a tenth of what their opponents spent. And so obviously I reached out to him because not only is he a conservative hero of mine, but he's also going through what I went through, which is being a poor man trying to win a rich race. And I love Matt Shaheen. Matt Rinaldi is another guy I've reached out to quite frequently. Jonathan Stickland has become a really good friend of mine as a champion in the House. And also Don Huffines to a degree as well. He also took a lot of beating. And let me tell you, this is another reason why I want to get into the Senate, because I sort of felt like, for the most part, because there are so few true blue conservatives, I think, in the Senate. There's a lot of Republicans, but there are so few of the caliber that we need up there. And when Stickland and Huffines were being just beaten to death on the floor and just being treated completely unprofessionally. I mean, I just wanted to scream. Actually, I got told to be quiet a couple times up in the rafters. These kinds of representatives need support, and they need someone to be able to back them up. And we've, like I said, I'm gonna not mention the people in this room because I don't want to puff up their heads or make it sound like I'm sucking up. But I mean, there were people that did that, but there weren't enough that stood up for these kind of people. So those are the ones that I would reach out to just off the top of my head. There is a really good list, and thankfully there's more this time than there was last time, and hopefully there will be more next time than there was this time.
CJ,
Sir.
tell me what true blue means. Because there's a lot of weird faces when you said blue.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean blue in the Democrat sense. I mean people who believe in the American values, the principles that this country was founded on, the constitutional devotion, and the principle, moral, and values that created this country and founded the freedoms and the liberties that we enjoy. Those are people who are true and stick to that field of blue that's on our flag. That's how I equate it. That's how I've always sort of equated it to. So.
Did you answer that question? Yes, you did. That's right. Yes, you did. Sorry. Okay. We're going to go ahead and let each of you have 3 minutes to just kind of let us know some closing comments from you. If there's anything that you'd like to talk about, maybe something that we didn't cover tonight, but you've got 3 minutes. Go ahead, Mr. Downton.
I'll introduce myself a little since I was late to get to it at the beginning. My name is Ryan Downton. I'm the president and one of the owners of Little River Healthcare King's Daughters Clinic here in Temple. I'm a father, I'm a small businessman, and I'm a big government survivor. And what I mean by that is my first medical business, when Obamacare passed 4 years ago, was dealt a devastating blow. It forced me to sell the company. And it made me realize you can't just let government affect you. You need to stand up and fight back. And that's what we need in the Texas Senate. We need people who are willing to fight for our rights, willing to fight for our values, and when necessary, willing to fight the establishment. I'm proud to say I'm the one candidate in the race who can say I've been doing that. I've been in court with President Obama for the last 4 years defending the congressional map passed by the state of Texas. His Justice Department and I really don't see eye to eye at all. My first deposition, out of the 6 times they've deposed me, they handed me their guidelines and said, this is how we think redistricting should be done. Did you read it? I told them, yes, I read it. And they said, well, it doesn't look like you followed it. And I said, you're right, I didn't follow it. What you're asking us to do is to violate Texas state law and to violate the federal Constitution. And we're not going to do that. We're going to pass a legal, conservative map that the Texas people support. And if we need to be in court with you for the next 10 years, then that's what we'll do. I've also run against the Republican establishment in Texas. In 2012, I took on a seated state representative. He passed a bill, in my mind, giving amnesty to illegal immigrants. He filed a bill. Thankfully, it didn't pass. And I disagreed with him, and I felt that I should get out there and take him on and take my shot. So I will continue to do that if I'm elected to this office. I will fight for you. I will fight for Texas principles. I will fight for Texas values. Ryan Downton for Senate District 24.
We're under attack. There's no time for politics as usual. It's time to take a stand together now. As the left loves to point out, we're a house divided. The narrative is that portions of our party have shifted right. Traditional Republicans are on one side and the Tea Party types are on the other. We fight among ourselves and chaos ensues. The left loves it, saying we're unfit, unwilling, and unable to govern. They give today's turmoil over the Speaker of the House as an example. I reject the premise that the root of the problem is a rightward shift of a portion of the base. Traveling around this large district, I find that members of GOP clubs and Tea Parties have remarkably the same views. All agree that our border should be secure. All agree that government is too large. All agree abortion is wrong. We should have freedom of religion and the right to bear arms. All agree we must stand against urban overreach and special interest. All agree we owe our children a good education. The voters haven't changed. What has changed is that there's an ongoing awakening to the truth that many of our representatives aren't conservatives and have never been conservatives. The turmoil is because they, and some in party leadership, are upset that the pigeons are seeing them for what they are. They're mad that the jig is up and are pitching a hissy fit. John Boehner didn't lose his speakership because the electorate changed. He lost it because the people of Texas and other states woke up, saw their own representatives complicit with Boehner, and demanded a change. The same dynamic is working on the state level. We can't allow the elites to divide us. Let's recognize our philosophical kinship, offer one another a measure of grace, and join to fight a common enemy. Many of you have been long in the fight. Thank you. I come late, but I'm here now to stand with you. May God bless our efforts, and may God bless Texas.
I am not a politician. I'm running because I'm kind of fed up with politicians. My wife and I have been stockpiling deodorant and anything we can do to mask the smell of becoming a politician. I'm running because I'm fed up. I'm running because the Constitution means something to me. For my entire life, I have stood up for what is right, sometimes when it's very unpopular. There are some times where I stood up in this area, and they were very unpopular. But what no one can say about me is that I don't have a backbone, that I'm not willing to stick my neck out and do what's right in spite of what the conventional wisdom may tell us. When I was a young sergeant, I recommended my commander for an Article 15. You don't do that as an enlisted soldier. I did that, and I won. I got promoted to platoon sergeant after that. When I was in 2009, after Obama got elected, I had a very popular military blog, and I was very pointed about his policies. As a soldier, you're not supposed to do that. I got in a lot of trouble for that. I stood up and I said no. I told the commanders, as they were trying to tell me to stop writing the truth, that you don't have any authority to tell me to stop writing the truth. I'm not breaking any laws, I'm not breaking any regulations, and I'm not lying about anything. And I won, but I stood up. I have a record and a history of standing up for morals, Christian values, and Christian principles. Even though I was in the federal government, I stood up to the federal government. While I was in Afghanistan, I got in trouble because I was actually talking about how we were not training the Afghan soldiers on protecting the rights of the Afghan people. I wasn't supposed to talk about that. I did that. I've gone in front of 4-star generals to stand up for what's happened here locally about my activism for gun rights and them trying to tell me to stop. And it was very unpopular. And I wasn't making any friends. And quite frankly, I didn't even get a retirement award because of it. But it didn't matter to me. It was right. Standing up for Texas is what's right. And because I have that history of standing up to the establishment, of standing up for our rights, for standing up for our values, you know that when I get into Austin, it's going to be the exact same thing. The last thing that Austin wants is to see me every day. And that's what's going to happen if you put me in there in the District 24. I want to go to Austin to serve you, not to be served by you. And I need your vote, cjgrisham.com, and I appreciate your support. Connie, thank you for holding this, and thank everybody for coming out today. And that's my 33 minutes of it.
Thank you. Thank y'all so much, all of you. Mr. Johnson, Mr. Mays, Mr. Christian, I appreciate you so much. They have all passed their first test because they were told not to come. So, give a big round of applause, please. Thank y'all very much for coming.